We welcome you to another live edition of the Sports Box, brought to you by our friends at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use the box at sign up for 10 points. And here we go.
Hey, Noah. Welcome, everybody. Really excited tonight. How are you, Noah?
I'm great, man. I'm great. I had a nice shower right before the show. Got my gear on. You see I got my nice flannel UGA shirt. I don't wear this very often, but it's a beauty. Got my hat on as well. I'm ready to go, man. How are you?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like it's safe to say both of us are, as always, fired up, but a little bit extra fired up tonight, as we all know what is tomorrow. And we actually have a really good slate of games tomorrow. I'll go ahead and throw that up real quick. Before we get into our Florida-Georgia talk, as we're both looking forward to, and we'll probably spend a little bit of time on, I just want to go ahead and throw up the list of games here. We actually got a few games going on tonight. Miami is at NC State, and I know BYU in a big game versus Boise State. I really like NC State. I actually, they're the underdogs despite being a scrappy team who's played everybody real tough this year. They are home, and they're actually up 24-21 just before halftime. You got any predictions on this game, Noah?
Well, I think you'd agree with me, Garth. I'm not really big on Miami. I think they have a decent team, but I don't really think they played anybody. The only real team they played was Clemson, and we all know how that went for them. And I agree with you that I think NC State's a team that kind of goes under the radar. Like you mentioned, they're up right now, and they're 4-2. I mean, they've lost to Virginia Tech and North Carolina, but they're still a pretty good team. And I think, those are two good teams they've lost to. So I'd probably pick NC State in that game. I think it'll be close like it is right now, but I think NC State's underrated, man. I really do.
Yeah, agreed completely. And also, like I said a few shows ago with Miami, is I do think that they're trending up. I do really like De'Aaron King. I think that they're starting to put the pieces in play down there in Miami. But I think that they're not quite there yet. They still got, they're missing a few things. They need some more experience. It's only their head coach's second season down there. So, it's definitely a game I can see them losing tonight and potentially dropping back towards the back of the top 25, if not out completely. Now, the other game that I mentioned that I'm personally really excited for is BYU at Boise State. I don't know why, but I've always been kind of, somewhat of a fan of Boise State, whether it's the jersey colors or what. But who would you take in that game, Noah?
That's a tough one. And I do actually agree with you. There's just something about that blue field that Boise State has. I just love that. Great atmosphere. But yeah, we've talked about BYU. They've kind of come out of nowhere, man. Number 9 right now, and obviously the main star for them is Zach Wilson. Dude's been lighting it up. He's probably shooting up all the draft boards right now. But it's tough. I don't know if BYU's even played anyone, to be honest with you. I'm just looking at their schedule right now, and I don't see a single ranked team on here. So Boise State's their first real challenge. I think Boise State's a team that, kind of like NC State, always flies under the radar. They have some really good seasons, really good players, but because of their conference, I don't really think they get mentioned a lot. To be honest with you, I'm probably going to go with the upset there. I think Boise State can actually win that game, and I think they can knock BYU off. But it'll be a good game. I'd look for Zach Wilson to have a big game. But yeah, I'm going to pick Boise State there.
Yeah, and I got to go Boise State as well. I will say that BYU has already played 7 games, opposed to most teams only having played 4 or 5. Or in the case of Boise State, they've actually only played 2. But there's just, I got a gut feeling that Boise State is going to pull this game off and derail some of that BYU Zach Wilson hype train that's been going on. We got a lot of comments coming in here, guys. I want to make sure that I get to all these comments. We love interacting with you guys. My good friend Skylar's in here. I know he's really excited for the show tonight. He says, go Ducks, which that's going to be a topic of the night. Pac-12 does return tomorrow, although I have heard some games have already been canceled, but Oregon is good to play. So they'll be playing tomorrow. Josh is fired up about Notre. Comment by Josh that I'm not going to throw up here. No offense to Josh. I'm going to leave that one off the screen, but you have me chuckling. But yeah, as always, joining in. Really excited to see all you guys here. With that said, Noah, let's go ahead and jump into the main theme of our night here. As we all know, we've got Florida at Georgia tomorrow. It's the SEC on CBS Game of the Week, 3:30. I don't know if College Game Day is going to be there, but definitely a SEC Game Day. Tim Tebow and the guys there. And it looks like it's going to be a battle of offense versus defense, with Georgia having a really tough defense who really wears you down throughout the game. And as we all know, the Gators, who have had a complete lack of defense, but really shined on the offensive side of the ball. What are some of your thoughts on this game, Noah, and some of your keys to win the game?
Well, I think it's a game of matchups, like you mentioned. You're looking at the two offenses and defenses. You have an elite defense that UGA has, and the Florida offense has just been absolutely going off, as you see right there. Battle of offense versus defense. Florida number 1 in the SEC in points per drive. Georgia number 1 in points allowed per drive. So an elite offense versus elite defense, I think that's what everyone will be talking about. But also you have to look at the other side. Georgia's offense is underperformed, and you can say Florida's defense is definitely underperformed. They completely botched that A&M game for you guys. But I think that actually might be where the game is decided, because we all know UGA's defense will show up. You're not going to be able to contain Florida's offense completely. I think it'll be, what can our offense do against your defense? Can your defense make any big plays? Can Stetson Bennett actually improve from what he's done the past 2 weeks and have a decent game? And if not, are they going to throw JT Daniels in or anything like that? I definitely think it's going to be a good game. I don't know your thoughts on it. A lot of very interesting matchups in this one.
I will say personally, one thing that I'm a little bit worried about headed into the game is, like you said, the past 2 weeks, Stetson Bennett has been down a little bit. Didn't really look like he had started the season. So I'm kind of worried that, they might just put it together tomorrow, as Georgia always tends to have, at least as of late, great QB performances against us. And I could see him, really coming on and having a really solid game for you guys tomorrow. And that's something that we don't want to see. I think that if we can get Stetson to struggle and play like he has the past 2 weeks, that's definitely a huge advantage. But,
Yeah, and I just because you said that, it kind of made me think of something. Last year, Jake Fromm wasn't having a great season by his standards. When we played you guys, he probably had his best game of the season. So it's going to be interesting to see if Stetson can do that. I don't know if he can. Obviously, he's a very young guy. I think that Alabama performance, which wasn't good at all, I think it definitely hurt his confidence a bit, because he actually started really well. But yeah, I'm going to be interested to see. Obviously, you guys have had your defensive struggles, but this is still a massive game for Stetson. He's got to show up. He's got to get his momentum and confidence back. But yeah, man, this is going to be a great game. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, at least for the Gators, that one of our keys to, if we're going to win the game tomorrow, is Kyle Trask has to just continue what he's been doing. He can't turn over the ball. I think that what the Gators want to do, because of the style of play that you guys have, is we want to make this more of, as Tim Tebow said earlier today, a track meet, basketball on turf. We want to push the ball up and down the field. We want to have, quick drives. We don't want to get stuck in, long drives that take up a lot of the clock, battling in between the trenches, and a lot of running the ball. Because if we do that, Georgia definitely has a major upper hand in that battle.
No, I definitely agree. You got to be able to pass the ball against our defense, because I think we're very stout against the run. If we can stop the pass game, I don't think you guys have the means to stay balanced against our run defense. And, hitting on Kyle Trask again, I don't like Florida, but we've talked about Kyle Trask a lot. I'm a big fan of him. I said before the season he was who I thought was the best quarterback in the SEC. Now, Mac Jones is obviously challenging that. But yeah, still a very good quarterback. I think a team is going to get him as a steal in the draft. And by the way, thank you to all our support. I saw that nice comment from David, our guys at Sport Life Uncensored. Great guys, man. Honestly, that group is the reason we're here right now. So big shout out to them.
Yeah, most definitely. We love having you guys in here. But yeah, one thing that I've been paying attention to the injury report because I know there was a lot of question marks with Georgia as to what guys were going to be out, what guys were going to be in. I do know the name's escaping me. I know it starts with the L. Your guys' safety. He's going to be out due to the motorcycle crash that he had. LeCount maybe, and actually 2 starting defensive linemen. So I feel like that's something that we got to take advantage of. Having your star safety out kind of opens up the deep ball if the guy that's coming in, doesn't perform to the same level. So we definitely got to take advantage of that. And I'm hoping that with those 2 big guys up front out on the defensive line that, our offensive line can play really well, but we'll just have to wait and see how much or how little that does impact the Georgia defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, unfortunately, Richard LeCount, our safety was in a pretty bad motorcycle accident. I haven't read up on the details too much, but I know his injuries aren't life-threatening, and he's expected to recover, so that's good. But yeah, I mean, obviously, injuries suck. That kind of injury definitely sucks. But I mean, shit happens. We just gotta. If he's not able to play, and I haven't looked at the injury report in depth just yet, we got to be able to next man up, man. Next man up. Our defense has done really well. I assume that we could replace him relatively well, but obviously he's a good player. It's not going to be easy to do.
Yeah, definitely a next man up mentality. And one guy that I'm personally really excited to see how big of a performance he can have is a guy on our defensive line, Brenton Cox, who actually used to be at one point a Georgia Bulldog. He's definitely been a pass rush first type of player for us. We're still waiting for him to develop into a 3-down defensive lineman who can stop the run. But he actually leads the SEC in QB pressures so far, despite only having, I believe, 1 or 2 sacks. But I think that he's got a little bit extra to play for, and hopefully he can be an impact player.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's got a lot to play for. This is a game that means a lot to him. We talked about this when he transferred. It's kind of you don't see it very often where a guy transfers to one of his team's biggest rivals. And obviously, I joked a lot about it at the time that the Florida's star defensive signing couldn't even play for us. But you got to give him credit. He is playing very well. He's going to come to this really motivated to show something. I do have a lot of faith in our offensive line. I think that's something that we've always had a strength in. So we'll see how they do against your defensive line, which has been strong for many years under Dan Mullen. I mean, the thing is, like we mentioned, your defense is struggling. So if we can contain Brenton Cox and the rest of the defensive line, I think we can do some damage.
Yeah, and that's definitely, for my Florida Gators, one of the really big question marks because, the defense has struggled. We did look a lot better last week, but the thing is that was only one game. And going into a game like this, I have no idea if we're going to see a defense, that plays like that. We finally attacked the ball, forced some turnovers, got some sacks. But I don't know if that's the defense we're going to see. And that definitely scares me a little bit because the last thing that we want to do is, be giving up chunk plays and getting pushed up and down the field and wore out.
Yeah, you guys did do better last week. I kept up with it a little bit. You guys destroyed Missouri. It's hard to say a lot because we all know Missouri isn't very good. They're 2-3 right now. In the SEC preseason poll, they were predicted to finish 6th in the East, ahead of only Vanderbilt. So it is hard to kind of gauge that. But you're right. It still is progress. You have to take what you can get when your defense is struggling that much. But obviously, we're no Missouri. It's gonna be a lot more difficult for you guys.
Yeah, and I actually kind of forgot that I had these. Backtracking, me and Noah quickly went over, impact players, and I just want to throw these up real here. For myself personally, the 2 guys that I picked is for the Florida Gators. Obviously, Kyle Trask. He's got to have a huge game, take care of the ball, really get the offense rolling. And like I said, on the Georgia side, I got Stetson Bennett because I feel like, him having a bad game can really help us, and him having a good game is going to make it difficult for us to stay in it all 4 quarters.
Yeah, no, I think those are 2 very solid choices. It's a quarterback game. Kyle Trask, he's been fantastic, absolutely. Stetson is struggling a little bit, but if Stetson can have a good game, if he can get some passing going early, and open up our running game. You know, our running game has been our strength as long as I've watched Georgia. So that is absolutely a big matchup. I couldn't agree more there. It's kind of a proven guy who's shown he can do it at an elite level versus this young up and coming guy who's kind of struggling lately, and he has something to prove. So I hope Stetson can use that, because I've seen a lot of doubt for Stetson, and no doubt. I hope he can have a bit of a chip on his shoulder to prove some of those people wrong, because I realize he hasn't played well the last 2 games, but this is a young guy who went in against freaking Alabama, and it's no surprise that he struggled against them. So I hope he can get his confidence back and play well.
Yeah, and I'll say, rivalry aside, hate for each other's team aside, Stetson Bennett is a guy that, other than this game, I'm rooting really hard for, because I just like the story behind the kid. He's kind of somebody who's just overcome the odds, similar to Kyle Trask. He's finally getting a shot, and I just, I hope he makes some and can succeed for the rest of the season. I want to go ahead and throw up Dave's comment here. You guys are doing such a great job. Better every show. That's definitely the goal, man. Me and Noah came into this knowing that we weren't professional sportscasters or anything like that, but we just wanted to get better week in, week out, and continue to put a better show on for you guys. So to hear that, really is like a huge pat on the back for us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to improve every week. Big shout out to David for saying that. We are trying to improve. Obviously, we're not professionals yet, but every week we're surpassing our limits, and it's only up from here, man. We're only going to get better and better. So yeah.
So before we go ahead and move on to another game, a really big game on tomorrow's slate that I'm excited to. It's a really good day of just college football in general, outside of just this game. We're kind of really spoiled tomorrow. But before we do go ahead and jump into another big game, I just want to get some final thoughts on, what's your score prediction, and what one main point that makes or breaks the game.
Oh, it's really tough. Obviously, we've talked a ton of crap, but all bias aside, I do think it'll be a really tough game for both teams. I think it'll be close. My main matchup, I think we've already mentioned it. Can Stetson Bennett play well against your defense? How will our defense do against your electric offense? Can we slow down a guy like Kyle Pitts, who's been absolutely destroying teams this season? It's really tough to say. I am going to pick us to win at all bias aside. I think that our defense is really good, and I think our offense will rebound enough against your defense that it's kind of struggled. I'd probably go a score of something like, I think I'm going to go 27-20 UGA.
I'm actually, before I give my score prediction here, I'm going to throw up Dave's comment, 27-24 Georgia. I was actually going to say that my score prediction was going to be somewhere along the lines of 27-24, 31-24, somewhere right in that area. All bias aside, I can definitely see the game coming down to maybe the final possession or a big field goal here or there. Definitely could see the game going either way. Georgia is the favorite by 2.5 points. It's going to be a tough game for us. I hope we can pull it off. It's been since 2016 since we beat you guys. It feels like every year, we got all kinds of hype going into the game, and Georgia just kills us. And, it doesn't end our season, but it definitely cuts our goals of getting to a SEC championship game again to face Bama, which is a whole nother animal that I won't get into tonight. But, there's so much on the line tomorrow. It still is early in the season, but I will say that I fully believe that this is going to determine who is the winner of the SEC East. I got to say Florida because that's my favorite team. I got to pick them to win, but definitely could see the game going either way for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a solid score for David. I almost said that myself, but yeah, I'm looking at, probably high 40s, maybe low 50s. I don't think you're going to see a complete shootout. I don't think you're going to see a game where it's 17-14 or anything like that. But I think you're going to see a nice back and forth, even game here, and 30-27, another solid score prediction right there. And it's going to be a good game. Hopefully, we can pull it out.
Yeah, so we could spend all night talking about this game. Obviously, me and Noah are both diehard fans of our teams. And we're right down here. Noah in Georgia and me in Florida. We're right in the thick of the rivalry. I wish I could be at this game this year so badly, but COVID and all that.
Hey,
Next year.
next year, man, next year, I swear we're gonna go together. We are
Yeah, if you
going.
guys didn't know, it's a really actual big goal of me and Noah to make it to a game together. But moving on, so we don't spend the whole entire show on the one game. The other game that I was really looking forward to is this Clemson at Notre Dame game tomorrow night on ESPN at 7:30. It's actually the highest matchup of ranked teams in the conference history, and there's some really big pieces missing on the Clemson side as Trevor Lawrence is going to miss another game due to COVID. They will be playing a freshman quarterback who I will say looked really good last week against a scrappy Boston College team who's played a lot of teams really tough, and I believe they're 4-2 or 3-2, somewhere right in there. They've actually been really good. And my biggest thing is, can Notre Dame finally capitalize? As we all know, everybody has been saying the past few seasons, much like Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, they can't get it done in the big games. I feel like they finally got to win one. I mean, if you're going to win one, it's now. You're at home, no Trevor Lawrence. They just got to get it done now.
Absolutely, they have to finally win a big game. And this is crazy. Number 1 versus number 4. I did not think that Notre Dame would be this high going this late in the season. But yeah, massive game. Like you mentioned, Trevor Lawrence is out. That said, the backup when he came in, he looked really good. I did think he looked really good. Now, obviously you have to look at the competition. I think they were playing Boston College, and they had to have a massive comeback in that game to even win. So that is concerning. But I mean, the backup, I'm just going to call him DJ because I have no clue how to pronounce his last
Yeah,
name.
it's definitely a tongue twister.
Yeah, DJ, he came in, he played very well. So, maybe they'll be feeling a little more confident than you would think for a team that just lost Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, you're right. Notre Dame is a big game for them, and they're going to look at it and say, hey, this is a great team, but their quarterback's out. Are we ever going to get a chance to speak again? This could help them. This could win them the ACC. And, yeah, I mean, it's really tough because we've talked a lot about this off show. We're not high on Notre Dame, and to be honest with you, not a big fan of Brian Kell. I think he's a very overrated coach. I think he's choked a lot of big games. I mean, he choked last year to Michigan, and we've all talked about Jim Harbaugh being a choking coach. Well, if you choke to a choking coach, that's like the ultimate choke. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
Big opportunity for them. But I'm still probably going to pick Clemson there, to be honest.
Yeah, it's definitely tough to pick against Clemson, even with no Lawrence. I will say that there is another guy on the Notre Dame side other than the coach that's tend to not show up in big games, and that is their quarterback, Ian Book, who is been there for it seems like forever now. He's one of my guys that Dame is going to pull this off. He's got to finally come up clutch in a big game and just have a really solid performance. He can't turn the ball over. He can't, miss big time throws. If you're going to beat a team on the caliber of Clemson, you got to get it done at the quarterback position. And on the other side, without Trevor Lawrence and a guy who's been having a phenomenal season. I mean, he just last week broke the ACC all-time rushing record for total yards. Is ETN, who probably, honestly, because of how good quarterbacks have played this season, hasn't been getting enough recognition in the Heisman Trophy race, or at least being rated high enough. I think that he's a guy that can really help Clemson, put points up on the board. He's going to take a lot of pressure off a young quarterback, as a safety valve out of the backfield.
Yeah, absolutely right. You mentioned ETN. This is a guy that literally everyone thought was probably going to the draft. And he was projected to go pretty high in the draft, but obviously he came back for his senior season. Dude's absolutely lighting it up. And, Ian Book, it's tough because I do think he's a good quarterback. Last year he threw 34 touchdowns and 6 picks. But, what's the competition, man? They had that big game against Michigan and they lost. So this year he's doing okay, 7 touchdowns to 1 pick. But he's only completed 61% of his passes against conference opponents, which I don't think is that high. And this might be the biggest game of his career. I haven't really don't remember any other games as big as this that he's played, but it's a big opportunity. We'll see what he does.
Most definitely. Dave chiming in with Notre Dame 38-35. I do know that looking into the game a little bit today, that actually surprisingly, in terms of total defense, Notre Dame does rank higher than Clemson, and Clemson has a phenomenal defense. Just to be different, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that Ian Book finally has a really good performance in a big game. Notre Dame just squeaks by. Nothing other than just, honestly. I'm not going to guarantee a Notre Dame game or a win, rather, but I'm just going to go out on a limb and pick Notre Dame. Ian Book, big performance tomorrow night.
I like where you and Dave are at. I honestly, as a neutral, nothing against Clemson. I respect him. I love Dabo Swinney. I hope that happens because that would really shake things up. That would be very interesting, especially coming in the year when everyone was saying, "Oh, all Clemson conference." If someone could beat them legitimately, that'd be really nice to see. That would shake things up a lot.
And I will say, much like with the Georgia and Florida game, we are early into the season, but this game probably will end up having huge implications on the playoffs. I feel like if you're Notre Dame and you can pull this game off, that's going to give you a huge boost over the rest of the season. Whereas on the other hand, if you lose this game, it could probably derail you, and I could see them their game here and just totally being out of the conversation for playoffs. And on the other side for Clemson, it feels like every year everybody with the ACC cupcake argument, which I don't feel is so true this year, as there has been some really tough ACC teams this year, but I feel like it's a must win for them as well, coming out of the ACC, looked up as highly as the SEC. And when you see two teams usually coming out of the SEC, I feel like they probably need to get it done here tomorrow night.
Yeah, absolutely. And backtracking a little bit, we talked about Georgia versus Florida. This is a big opportunity for you guys because if you can win this game against us, one of these top four teams has to lose. So you're gonna skyrocket if that happens. But no, yeah, obviously, huge implications tomorrow in those games. It's gonna be absolutely massive. And as a fan, you just love to see it. Whether you're supporting any of the teams like we are, or you're just a neutral, it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, and one other thing that I wanted to touch on college football here going into tomorrow is Oregon Ducks. Always kind of rooted for them. Really interested to see how they're going to do this year with Justin Herbert now being gone and on my Chargers, as we all know. They take on Stanford tomorrow, which Stanford and Oregon usually tend to have pretty good games. They've always been pretty exciting, especially when, guys like Andrew Luck and Christian McCaffrey were out there, and Oregon had guys like Mariota. What are your realistic expectations for Oregon? I know we got some Oregon fans in here, so I'm sure they'll be excited to hear our thoughts on Oregon in the season.
Well, some people in here would know this. I think you do too. I love Oregon. I'm not big into that second team thing, but if I was, Oregon would be my second favorite team. I've just always loved them. Mainly because, they've had a lot of exciting players that I liked, like Michael James, DeAnthony Thomas, Mariota. And, I love their uniforms. Autzen Stadium is incredible. And also, their mascot is a freaking duck. It's Donald freaking Duck, okay? How can you not love that, man? That is just awesome. But no, speaking objectively here, this is a team I think is going to do very well. Coming in, Pac-12, the media poll for the preseason, they have Oregon winning the North, 35 first place votes. Second place is California. They only have 3. I think this team is going to do well. It's obviously tough with the 7-game schedule. I don't know how this is going to work with the playoffs. But looking at the schedule, I don't see anyone that I think they can go undefeated. Honestly, I think they'll beat Stanford, Washington State, UCLA, Oregon State, California, Washington. I think they can beat all those teams, man. This is a team that could legitimately go undefeated, and I think that's going to cause some serious, debate for the playoffs. Are you going to let in a 6 or 7-0 team into the playoffs over, say, a 1-loss team that's like 9-1? It's going to be very interesting, but I hope the Ducks do well. I hope they win all their freaking games, to be honest with you, unless they play us and make the playoffs.
Yeah, and I was gonna actually say one thing that you mentioned is I feel like for a Pac-12 team to make it this season, whether it's Oregon or not, you got to go undefeated. Shortened schedule, as you said, they're only going to be playing 7 games, so that really plays against them. When you got ACC playing 10, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe ACC is playing 11 or 12. Um, but that definitely does go against them. So I would say that for sure they got to go undefeated, and then probably the other thing that they would need to happen is for the SEC to not have 2 teams make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, no, it's definitely going to be difficult, and I think what works against Oregon as well is when you look at their schedule. As of right now, they're not playing any ranked teams, so maybe they'll play a team like USC in the championship game, and that'll help them. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a big debate. I really have no clue how it's going to work out, but I hope they do well for sure.
Yeah, and one other thing is the potential of maybe a non-power five team making it as well. I know that's a pretty hot topic every season, and one team that jumps to mind, especially if they can get a kind of a standout victory tonight, go in there and handle Boise State well, is can BYU make a push? I mean, they're already up to number 9. If they go undefeated, I'm going to pull up their schedule here real quick because I honestly have no idea who they play outside of Boise State tonight. Um, but if they can go undefeated, maybe they even make a case for playoffs. Let's see here. They got Boise State tonight. Then they go and they play North Alabama. So, that's not really anybody noteworthy. And San Diego State. And that's actually going to conclude their schedule for the season. So, I mean, the position that they're in, I feel like you got to go out and you got to kill Boise State tonight. It's got to be your statement victory for the season. And then moving forward, you got to hope that Boise State finishes the season strong and just doesn't, plummet off.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I think what you're talking about, Garth, right there. I think it'll be something like another UCF argument. Are you going to let an undefeated team in that really hasn't played anybody, but maybe they played one good team and played well, versus say a one-loss team, but they've played way better competition consistently? I think it's going to be very difficult. And like we've mentioned many times, I think that these, I have heard about that a lot. I've been compared to Seth Rogen. I have been compared to Seth Rogen a lot. But yeah, I mean the playoffs. I mean, who the hell knows, man? Honestly, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, definitely going to be interesting, college football playoff scenario when we do get to it. And like I said, man, if 2 SEC teams don't get in, I feel like that 4th spot, you're probably going to get one out of the ACC, whether it's the favorite Clemson or if Notre Dame can pull it off tomorrow night and finish the season undefeated. You're going to get an SEC team in either Alabama, Georgia, Florida, whoever can make it to the SEC championship game and win it. But that 4th spot, if a second SEC team doesn't make it in, it's going to be up for complete grabs. Be a non-power 5. It could be Oregon out of the Pac-12. We don't really know. And honestly, even if they got killed, maybe not seeing 2 SEC teams and somebody completely different college football playoffs would be pretty cool to see, in my opinion.
Absolutely, and it just fit the craziest year of all time, one of the craziest seasons of all time. It'd be very, very interesting to see that. And yeah, I did notice he spelled Seth Rogen wrong. I just didn't say anything, but yeah.
I was actually just reading that in my head, and for whatever reason, it sounds like some Star Wars character name.
Yeah, it does. It does, and it also reminds me of my guy Gohan from Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh man, good times, good times.
All right, so I mean, I feel like we've covered a pretty good patch of college football there. Definitely talked about what I wanted to talk about. So moving on, let's jump over to the NFL side, which despite my Chargers having lost last weekend, I'm really excited for because not only do we get Tampa Bay, New Orleans, Sunday Night Football, we also get another game in Baltimore at Indianapolis, who, if you guys don't already know by some grace of God, huge Phillip Rivers fan, rooting for the Colts extremely hard. If the Chargers can't make the playoffs, that's definitely going to be my team for the playoffs. So there's a lot of big games. Last night, the Packers got back to how they've been looking on the offensive side of the ball. Aaron Rodgers absolutely torched the 49ers, which in fairness were without a lot of starters. But yeah, there's a lot of games that jump out at me this weekend. And let's go ahead and I guess let's just jump right into that Baltimore-Indianapolis game. And what are some of your thoughts on that one, Noah?
Well, I think it's going to be a good thing, a good game. I think we've mentioned this before. I think Indianapolis's defense is very good. I don't know if they're still ranked number one. I'm going to get the stats up real quick here. Yeah, they're still ranked number one in yards. They're only giving up. Actually, I don't see a points per game average here, but yeah, they're ranked first in yards. They're only giving up 4.9 yards a play. So very good defense here. And Baltimore, I think they've started to struggle a bit. They played the Steelers last week. Obviously, Steelers best team in the NFL in my opinion. But they had a struggle win against the Eagles before that. They lost to the Chiefs early in the season. Philip Rivers, we've mentioned him a lot. I don't think he's a guy that needs to carry a team anymore. I think what you're looking at with him is he's coming into a team that I think already has a lot of good players, but struggled last year due to mediocre quarterback play. I like Jacoby Brissett, but realistic, I think he's a good backup to a lower end starter. And I think you saw a lot of struggles last year because of his play. You get Philip Rivers in there to a pretty good team, and they've done really well. I believe, aren't they 5-2?
Yes, they are 5-2, and they're tied with the Titans for the lead in the NFC South. Which I went out on a limb in the preseason and said that Philip Rivers would be enough for that Colts team to definitely compete with the Titans. We're gonna have to see how it goes when they do play the Titans. That'll probably decide the division. But yeah, one thing that you mentioned with the Ravens and some struggles recently is they've kind of actually been a major shock to me. We've seen them play really well, and we've also seen them really struggle. I don't really know, what to expect of them moving forward. I feel like until I see them get hot and just start, pummeling teams for a few weeks, I can't be sold on them, especially with how good the Steelers have been. And then on the other side with the Colts, one guy that I wanted to mention tonight is Nimian Hines. This guy has been really good. He really jumped out at me last week. I mean, he doesn't have any stats that are going to, make you go, wow. But he also hasn't had a lot of, touches. He's just kind of starting to get involved in the offense a little bit more. But he does have 200 yards receiving and 3 receiving touchdowns already out of the backfield. So he's definitely that guy that, and I know Philip Rivers really likes to have these type of guys so he can just dump it off when he feels the pressure coming and nobody's open down the field and he can make stuff happen out of the backfield. So I'm really excited to see how he does tomorrow.
Yeah, I think when you look at a guy like Hines, he's not a guy that's going to handle the bulk of the rushing. Look at his stats. I don't even think he has 100 yards rushing. His average isn't very good. But like you mentioned, he's a good receiving back. I think what they want is obviously it sucks Marlon Mack got hurt, but they want Jonathan Taylor to handle the bulk of the rushing. And Naheem Hines, he comes in as the receiving back. And yeah, I think Frank Reich, I love Frank Reich too. I think he's a fantastic coach. I'm rooting for the Colts in this game, but I love Lamar Jackson, but I also love Philip Rivers. I love Frank Reich. The Ravens, it's tough. I still think they have a really good defense. Looking at the stats, like I said, the Colts are first in yards, but I mean, the Ravens are fourth, and I actually found the points for tab right here. I think, they have one of the best point scoring defenses in the league, the Ravens. So, Lamar Jackson, I think he's just got to cut down on the turnovers. He had 2 against the Steelers. He has 3 in the past 3 games. He just needs to cut down those turnovers that he's getting. I think they'll be okay. But this is a good game, and it's in Indianapolis. So, obviously the home field advantage, it doesn't mean as much. But I still think it does mean a little bit of something. You're sleeping in your own hotel. You're in your own city. You're more comfortable. I think it still does mean a little bit. And, Colts, they just destroyed the Lions last week, which, okay, it's the Lions, sure. But, they're going to be confident after scoring 41 points in a game. So this is a good game, 2 good teams. I'm honestly probably going to pick your guy, Philip Rivers, in this game. I think the Ravens are a bit shell-shocked after losing to the Steelers, after struggling against the crappy Eagles. No offense to the Eagles, but But yeah, I'm going to pick the Colts in that game, to be honest.
Yeah, and one guy that was mentioned there, kind of a random fact that I want to throw out, Frank Wright was mentioned real quick. I want to mention that he actually was the former offensive coordinator for the Chargers. So him and Philip Rivers have a really good relationship. One of the major reasons that he ended up there in Indianapolis with the starting job, and the offense is really starting to pick up here. And Philip Rivers specifically, no, I want to mention that, yes, it was against the Bengals and the Lions, who we both know don't have that great of defenses. But over the last 2 games, 6 touchdowns to only 1 interception. I don't have the exact number, but just doing some rough math here off the top of my head, it's got an average rating in the 2 games of like a 115. And he's thrown for over 600 yards in those 2 games. So, a lot of guys were saying that he's washed up. He wasn't going to be able to get it done in Indianapolis. I still don't think that obviously he's on the prime of his career. This isn't Philip Rivers that we saw back in 2008, 2009. I think that he's enough to definitely compete for not only a wild card spot, but potentially the division. And I'm really looking forward to this game tomorrow.
Well, Garth, luckily I got you. There's this fantastic website that exists called Pro Football Reference that has stats for anything you want. I can click on Philip Rivers' game logs for the past 2 games and give you his exact stats. So here we go. 52 completions on 77 attempts. That's good for a 67.5% completion percentage. 633 yards. That means he's averaging 316.5 yards in those 2 games, 6 touchdowns to 1 pick, 113.2 quarterback rating. So you're right. That is absolutely going to get it done. You can look at the competition all you want, but I mean, you play who's on the schedule, right? And if you're going to knock Philip Rivers for how he started the season and then not give him credit when he actually does play well, I think it kind of makes you look hypocritical. I got to give him credit. I think he started to pick it up a bit. But this is going to be a big test for him against that Ravens defense. Like I mentioned, 4th in total yardage, good point scoring defense. The only really bad performances they had are against the Chiefs and Steelers, who are major Super Bowl contenders. I'm hoping your guy pulls it off. I hope the Colts win this game, and I think they can. I think the Ravens are going to be a little shell-shocked.
Yeah, one thing that I want to point out real quickly before we move on from this game is also the fact that, who is Philip Rivers throwing the ball to? I mean, T.Y. Hilton's out. They got a lot of guys in there who, haven't been doing it for years. They don't have the production or the experience under their belts, and he's making the most of it. No Marlon Mack, as we said. So he's got Hines in the backfield, another young guy who really hasn't proven himself yet. So he's really doing really well, in my opinion, for what he has there in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. T.Y. Hilton, I love T.Y. Hilton. Ever since Luck retired and he had that injury in 2018, he's not been the same guy. And, this is not really a good stat. They don't have anybody above 300 yards on the season. Their leading receiver is T.Y. Hilton. He has 251. Zach Pascal, 242. Mo Alley Cox, 231. Marcus Johnson, 227. Their 5th leading receiver is Nyheim Hines, like you mentioned, who has 200 yards. He also has their most receiving touchdowns. When you're a guy that coming into the season was your 3rd-string running back and is your 2nd-string running back now has the most receiving touchdowns on the team, I don't think that's a very good sign. I do like Jack Doyle, but he only has 9 catches in the year. I'm not really sure if that's just how they're using him or if he's not doing too hot. Trey Burton, a touchdown. He's only averaging 8.3 yards of reception. So, yeah, that's a great point, Garth. The weapons are not great right there for Philip.
Yeah, we're used to seeing running backs by committee, but talk about wide receiver by committee there. And as, paying attention to your guys' comments here, it's a lot of Saints, Buccaneers stuff coming in here that I wanted to save because now we're going to move on to that game. A lot of you guys are really fired up for this game this week, rightfully so. Big time rivalry. It's the final meeting, at least in the regular season of this year. And with the potential, I feel like AB is going to play. I don't know how much he's going to play. Maybe we see him once, maybe we see him 20 times. I wouldn't expect him to go out there and have 200 yards receiving. But definitely a lot of interesting factors in this week's game, and with the rivalry and a lot of conference on the line moving forward. I'm really excited for this one on Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, absolutely. And, like you mentioned, this is going to be a heated game. I assume Mike and David are both in here. Mike is obviously a Bucks fan, David a Saints fan. And yeah, AB, I just saw he had his first practice as a Buck lately. Same with Brady. First it was that he's washed up and wouldn't make a difference. Now it's on. He's on. Hey, Mike, you know how these haters are. First it was, the Bucks are going to suck. He's not going to make a difference. And then now that Tom Brady's on pace for 40 touchdowns, it's, well, look at the receivers he has. That's what he's supposed to do. Even though Mike Evans is literally having his worst career year ever, he's not even going to be even close to 1,000 yards if he keeps up this pace. But that's another story. Let's not get into that. But yeah, absolutely massive game. I don't know if AB's going to play. He only had his first practice, I think, yesterday or the day before. If he doesn't, I think they still have the weapons to compete. Yeah, Evans. He's been struggling a bit, but he's still a very good receiver. You obviously Chris Godwin. I think Gronk lately has started to come into his own as well. Now that said, the Saints a few days ago made a trade I thought was actually very good, and it's a player that the Bucks will actually know very well. They traded for Quan Alexander. I think Quan Alexander has always been a very good player. I think he's actually flown under the radar a few years.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that myself. I feel like he's a very under the radar linebacker guy I've always liked personally.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy, I think it might be injuries. I'm looking at the stats. He's been injured a lot. He's only played 19 games the past 3 years. But when he does play, this is a guy that in his last healthy season was a Pro Bowler. This is a guy that had a season with 145 combined tackles. This is a good player right here. So I think that's a very good trade that they made for him. And they only traded away, I think they traded away a pick and Kiko Alonso. And Kiko Alonso, he's good when healthy, but I believe he's 31 years old. So I thought that was a very good trade for them. I haven't kept up with how much he's been practicing or whatever, if he's going to play or anything. I assume he will. But I thought that was a very good trade for them.
Yeah, and I pulled something up here real quick. I was just curious to see, because I haven't been following it too closely, is Chris Godwin has been out due to injury. So I want to check in on that. And I'm seeing that today he actually did participate in practice. He was able to run routes and catch some passes. And I guess Bruce Arians had said that he would anticipate him probably playing. So that would definitely be huge for the Bucks. And then also they mentioned that Antonio Brown was a full participant in practice today, but like I said, it's going to come down to his understanding of the playbook, his comfortability with the offense and Tom Brady specifically. Like I said, expect to see him out there, but I wouldn't say expect to see him a lot.
Yeah, and I agree. And he's been injured a little bit, but he came back. He played against the Packers. He played against the Raiders. I think he had good games in those games. Not to light the world up, but he scored a touchdown against the Raiders. He had 88 yards. I think he's kind of feeling his way back in. And like you mentioned, I don't think the Bucks are going to use him very much. But at the same time, there's someone I got to mention here, Scotty Miller. Scotty Miller, I think Tom Brady. We joked about it. Tom Brady likes these midget white receivers, but you got to give credit. Scotty Miller here, he's a guy that's kind of come out of nowhere. He's becoming a household name because him and Tom Brady, they have an undeniable chemistry. Scotty Miller, he has 400 receiving yards in the season. I believe, don't quote me on this, I don't have the stats up. I believe he might be their leading receiver because Mike Evans hasn't been, lighting it up. Godwin was injured. I believe Scotty Miller is actually their leading receiver yards-wise.
Yeah, unfortunately, Mike Evans, like you said, is having a very down year, and it's had a huge impact on my fantasy team, sadly. Really hoping that he's going to pick up the pace, but I just, like you said, I don't see it happening. I will say, just looking back at Tom Brady's career in entirety, it seems like, every few seasons someone else comes in and he has this one guy that he really likes to target a lot and puts up a lot of yards. And then there's just this group of 3 or 4 other guys around him who, are talented guys, but they don't get the production. And I think that's kind of what we're starting to see now in Tampa Bay with Miller, as you said.
Yeah, I think he's always had these guys that, just kind of come out of nowhere. Wes Welker, when he played with the Dolphins, he wasn't really anything special. He was a good player, but when he came to the Patriots, it was completely different. Julian Edelman, he was kind of, buried on the depth chart for a few years, and then he emerged and became a great player for them. And I think the Bucs are hoping Scotty Miller can be a similar thing to them. And, it's very interesting to think about it. If everything comes together, you're looking at a team that has Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Scotty Miller, Antonio Brown, and Rob Gronkowski. And I think Ronald Jones is a pretty good running back too. So, okay, the offense is very good, but Tom Brady is also playing very well. He's 43 years old, and he is on pace for over 4,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. I mean, that is God tier. For a guy who's freaking 43 years old, that is better than most prime quarterbacks could hope for, no matter the weapons. So, and that team, they're coming together. They're going to improve as they've improved as the season gone on. Obviously, everyone hates the Bucs because they hate Tom Brady. After that first game against the Saints, everyone was making fun of him. They've been pretty quiet lately. I'll just say that. Thank you, Josh. Fantastic.
As always, we love having you guys here. So as we all know, the Saints did win the first meeting. I'm interested to see what happens. Are the Saints going to sweep, or can the Bucs get it done? Me personally, my take on this game, throw something up here real quick. And Mike, you're going to like this one. I got to go with Tom Brady and the Bucs. I can't see the Saints sweeping them. Brady's going to have a big game. As we all know, Tom Brady plays with a lot of emotion. We see him fired up on the field. We see him fired up on the sidelines, whether it's good or bad, whether, he's pissed off with his teammates or he's out there lighting it up. I feel like based on the performance in the first game, he's going to want to come out there and he's going to want to absolutely light him up. And I think he's going to have a really good game. And I think it's going to be enough to get them.
Yeah, you know what? This is a very tough game to predict. I know we got a lot of Saints fans in here, a Bucs fan. But I actually agree with you. I don't think and David says sweep there. When I look at this from a mostly neutral perspective, I don't think the Bucs are. I think they're too good to get swept. And, obviously it could happen. I'm not going to say it's not impossible. I just think that their roster has so much talent. I don't see them as a team that will get swept by the Saints. I think, Tom Brady's playing well. The offense is doing very well. The defense is good too. Let's give this some credit as well. I still got the defensive stats up. I can take a look at it real quick. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are number seven in yards against. So that's very impressive right there. And they have a very strong running defense. Now, Alvin Kamara, it's obviously going to be very difficult. I think he's probably been the best running back in the NFL this season, just because he provides so much on so many levels. He provides the running and the receiving. And, I think that's a fair prediction by Mike there. I could definitely see a score like that. I think it'll be high scoring. That's also, a good prediction. I think it's going to be a shootout here. I would probably pick the Bucs. That said, I think there's something very interesting here. We've all mentioned the Tom Brady and Drew Brees thing. Tom Brady and Drew Brees are actually currently fighting for number 1 overall on the career touchdown list. So I just want to point out how very cool that it is that these two are playing this level of greatness. You've got to appreciate it while it's here because it's not going to last much longer. And whether you like Drew Brees, you like Tom Brady or not, when they're gone, the league is not going to be the same. Football will not be the same. And, you can hate on them all you want. But when they're here, people will miss them. And I will miss them. Even though they've both caused me a lot of pain, I will miss both of them when they retire. And I hope people can understand that and just put their hate aside for a little bit, enjoy the game, and enjoy the greatness that's going on right here.
Yeah, as you said, unfortunately, who knows how many more Brady Brees games we're going to get to see. It is, end of an era coming at some point here in the near future. Same with guys like Phillip Rivers, Ben Roethlisberger, Eli, on. So all bias aside, all hate aside, I feel like that we all just kind of got to relish in the moment because who knows in our lifetimes if we're ever going to see something like this in the NFL again. I mean, what's the likeliness that we're going to see two guys both battling it out for number one all time in the passing, touchdown department, and they're both right there in yards as well. The likeliness of seeing that's slim to none. So, don't miss these games, guys. As a sports fan, I'll definitely be tuned in. I'm not, I'm rooting for Brady. I'm a fan of Brady, but as the teams, Bucks and Saints, I don't really have a horse in the race. But I'm definitely going to sit down and watch this just for that sake.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a much watched game. Probably the game of the week. Excuse me. But no, you're right. I don't know if you ever see anything like this again. I don't think the records will stand. I think you'll see a time in the NFL where 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns is considered average. So I don't know how long those records will stand. Yeah, both are in their 40s. I believe Brees is 40 or 41. They are the GOATs. I agree. I think they're the two greatest quarterbacks that have ever played the game, to be honest with you. Those old men, they are indeed balling. But yeah, I don't think you'll ever see anything comparable to this. Even if their records don't stand, the fact you're seeing that two guys into their 40s, way past their prime, playing against each other, fighting for that record, giving everything they've got, it's awesome to see. It also makes me think, what if we could have had this 5 to 10 years ago? What if, let's say when the Patriots had Garoppolo or whatever, if they had traded Tom Brady to the Saints and we could have seen it for, 6 or 7 years or something, that would have been incredible to see. But, obviously we just have to appreciate it while it's here and these matchups that are going to be rare, but hopefully great.
Yeah, and there's one more game here on Sunday's slate that jumps out at me, and that is Seattle is traveling to Buffalo to take on the Bills. This is a really big game, honestly. DK Metcalf and Russell Wilson have been unreal the past few games. Russell Wilson's obviously probably the front runner for the MVP right now, and also not only DK Metcalf but Tyler Lockett. That's probably one of the best receiving duos in the NFL. So they're going to be coming to beat the Bills. But for the Bills, man, as far as I'm concerned, you come off beating the Patriots. That's a big boost despite the Patriots not really being it's just a feel good game to beat them, but you got to get it done against the Saints. I mean, they had the big game. They played them not so great. Really close game with the Chiefs that they probably should have won. It could have gone either way. Take away a turnover here or a mistake here. Now you've got Seattle, your third really big game of the season. You got to get it done, or I feel like you're going to start to question, hey, can the Bills win these games that really matter?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think a big theme here, Garth, is when I look at the Seahawks and the Bills, I think these are two teams that in the past have really prided themselves on defense. But this year they've actually let them down. I still got my trusty NFL defense rankings here. Yards allowed, the Seahawks are 31st. And of course, the last team guess, of course it's the Falcons, but 31st defense for yards allowed, not good. The Bills are the 11th worst. So, I mean, it's a little better, but it's still really below average. And obviously, when you're looking at this game, I think a very interesting matchup here is I think you have the two leading MVP frontrunners here. I think Russell Wilson and Josh Allen are my picks, my two favorites for the MVP. And the defenses are struggling. I think this is a game where you could see the over under. 70 points or something like that. It's gonna be crazy. Hey. Oh yeah.
Josh is the comedic relief tonight. Funny as always. But yeah, man, Buffalo. I don't know. I'm rooting for Buffalo in this game. I don't know if I can go against Seattle quite yet. Something just tells me that until I get a reason not to go with Seattle here.
It's tough. I think one thing you have to look at is Russell Wilson is not a guy that has bad games very often. Last week or whenever it was against Arizona, he had 2 crucial interceptions in that game. They kind of threw that game away, to be honest. I thought Arizona fought back very well, but I do think they kind of threw that game away a little bit. I think they're going to come out. They're going to be wanting to avenge that. Russell Wilson, he's going to be a bit upset that he had a rare off game for his incredible standards, and the Bills, like you mentioned, a big and I understand on the scope of the season it's not big because the Patriots are bad, but that still means a lot to them. The Patriots are obviously, their bogey team. That's the team that has basically owned them. And, the entire time Tom Brady was there, now that he's gone and they were able to beat him, that does mean a lot to them. I think they might come in this game a little overconfident from that, and the Seahawks are going to come in looking, to prove, yeah, our defense isn't great, but we can rebound. We can have this incredible offense with these star wide receivers, this incredible quarterback. I'm going to pick Seattle in that game.
Yeah, definitely got to go Seattle myself. But like I said, definitely rooting for the Bills. I hope they pull it off. A team in the AFC that I'm rooting for this year because I'm a really big fan of Josh Allen, and just for our good friend Mike Bradley's sake, I hope they can get it done. One other game that I want to talk about, just because it is the Chargers and Justin Herbert. They're going to be taking on the Raiders. I mean, I don't expect us to win, sadly. I've kind of given up hope on the season as a whole. Although I would like to see Justin Herbert keep performing really well. I guess that game with the Broncos last week just, put the nail in the coffin for me. Another lead blown. I mean, I'll have the list in front of me, but pretty much every game we've played this season, we've been up big, been up in the second half, and just blown it away. And oddly enough, it isn't because the quarterback isn't performing, because he has been. It's the defense just getting pushed up and down the field, and you couldn't catch it.
And I feel for you. I really do. Obviously, we've talked about this a lot. I've seen Matt Ryan play really well some seasons, and the defense just completely blow it. And I don't remember the exact specifics of the stat, but I believe I saw something. The Chargers are the first team in NFL history to blow 4 leads of 16 plus points in a single season. I don't know if that's exactly correct, but it's something along those lines. And I was surprised to hear that, considering the Falcons exist. We get all the hate for the blown leads. The Chargers, man, they're not a 2-5 team. They're really not. Justin Herbert has played very well. That Broncos game, though, man, the last play of the game. I can't imagine how heartbreaking that must have been for you to see that. Obviously, there's probably not a lot of hope on the season anyway, but just to lose in that way, that's just very, very disappointing.
Yeah, unfortunately, as a Chargers fan, I have become accustomed to. I will say that when Lynn first came in, I was really excited. I was rooting really hard for him. Like that now we kind of, he's got to be on the hot seat. They haven't come out and say it, which doesn't surprise me because nobody wants to come out and say that, hey, our coach is going to be fired soon or on the verge of being fired. We lost faith in him. But I feel like if you're Tom Telesco, if you're the Spanos family, you got to be really thinking about replacing this guy, especially with Justin Herbert under center. I see a lot of Chargers fans and Chargers pages commenting stuff like, hey, we got our guy at quarterback. We can't waste him away like Phillip Rivers. We got to get the right coach in there. We got to get an offensive line. I don't know who we would hire now. I don't know if you have any ideas or people who might be available to fill the position, but we definitely got to get rid of Lynn. And I hope it happens. I'm not counting on it, though, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked too much in that, Garth. Obviously, I think after the season, you're going to see a lot more candidates. we don't know who's going to 4 straight games. Thank you, Mike. We don't know who's going to get fired, who's going to be available or whatever. Welcome to our world. Yeah, man. I feel for them. I really do. A quarterback's playing great and it's just ruined by this terrible defense over and over again. I do relate to that a lot. I really do. Anthony Lynn, I think this is a guy. He had that one great season in 2018 where they almost won the West. Obviously they came up just short of that. They were good in 2017. They went 9-7, but the past, 2019 was terrible, 5-11. This year they're 2-5, and the way they've lost, and I'll ask your opinions on this, Garth, as a fan, but just from an outside perspective, I think it's a lack of a winning culture that they just, they keep getting up, but then the youth starts to show. The lack of experience and leadership starts to show, and they start blowing all these leads. And I think that's down to coaching, man. You can blame the players a little bit because, they're young, they got a lot to learn. But it's Anthony Lynn's job to get that team together, to keep them, composed and be able to hold a lead. And the fact that they've blown those types of leads in 4 straight games, I think that comes down to him.
Yeah, most definitely. I think that, as you said, there kind of is a lack of winning culture in the building. I think that starts at the top. That starts with your head coach. You got to instill that system. You got to, a lot of young guys on this roster. That's one thing that we're really lacking is veteran leadership. Philip Rivers is gone. Antonio Gates is retired. We got a lot of rookie guys playing out there. We've got a lot of first and second year guys playing. So that's a huge impact when it comes to games like that. But at the same, my personal opinion with it is that youth and inexperience has more of an impact when it's a close game and you're fighting to win and you come up just short versus being up big and blowing. So I feel like a lot of the blame's got to go to Lynn. Unless he somehow turns the season around, I don't see why you keep him at the end of the season. After last year, we had some big injuries, but at the same time, we had most of the same team from the 28 season and 5-11. Even with some key injuries, that's just, that's not living up to expectations. That's kind of wasting the talent that you had on the team. And now this year, I don't know. I don't see why we would keep him if the season continues to pan out the way it's gone so far.
Yeah, I agree. And, the only thing I'd say, and, I haven't kept up with your injury report in depth, obviously, but Derwin James being out obviously doesn't help the defense. But at the same time, how long is it going to take? I want to throw it back a little bit for you. Mike McCoy, when he was there, he started off well, but then he had 2 terrible seasons and got fired. I wonder if you're going to see the same thing with Lynn. If they keep losing like this, if they go something like 4-12, Mike McCoy went 5-11 when he was fired. He went 4-12 the year before that. What if you see the opposite? What if Anthony Lynn goes 5-11 and then 4-12? I think he definitely will get fired because say what you want about Spanos, say what you want about Tom Telesco. I think they're very impatient, so you can say that's a positive. If the Chargers struggle this year, I definitely think Glenn will be fired. I have no clue who they'll hire to replace him because, like I mentioned, the candidates they're going to come out a little later. Thank you, man. Thank you very much. But it's going to be interesting for sure. I'd like to see what that team can do with some, a new coach if that's what they need.
Yeah, and I understand the AFC West, very tough division. Obviously, the Chiefs at the top, they're a championship caliber team. Raiders, they're tough. We haven't seen championship caliber out of them yet, but they're definitely trending upwards, in my opinion. Definitely have a lot of talent overall on the roster and well put together coaching staff and front office. And, the Broncos, I honestly thought they were in worse shape than us coming into the offseason because I felt like our only real question mark was the quarterback position. And, they seem to have more optimism in their building than in ours. So we got to, we just, thankfully, at a talent level and at a depth chart level, we're not really in need of rebuilding. I think we just got to figure out the right people and the coaching staff to put all the talent together.
Yeah, and I think you're going to see what the Chargers are really made of here. Obviously that heartbreaking loss, the way they've lost all these games. This is a team that could easily be 4-3 or 5-2 right now, but they're 2-5. That said, and normally I wouldn't say this, but because of the seventh wildcard team, or the seventh wildcard team, seventh playoff team, their season's not over. Obviously, it's going to be very difficult because, like you mentioned, the division is tough. The Chiefs, obviously, the Raiders, I think, are starting to emerge as a very good team. And like you saw, the Broncos are no pushover. It's going to be very tough, but the season is technically not over. Can they ride Justin Herbert to maybe a 9-7 team? I don't think so. But obviously, it's the NFL. Nothing's for certain. They'd have to go on a major run and do it against good competition. But they still got something to play for. Will they play for the rookie quarterback, or will they lay down and fire their coach? We're just gonna have to see.
Yeah, and as we have seen, the Chargers, with exception of last season and a few others scattered throughout, do tend to get hot at the end of the season. They tend to turn it on in the months of November and December. So it is possible, like you said. Um, Fortunately, I don't really count it happening. I don't think we're going to make playoffs, sadly. I do think we're going to win some more games. I don't know, maybe something like 5-11, 6 and maybe 7-9, somewhere right in that span. But realistically, if we don't get really hot and go on a winning streak, I kind of rather us just continue playing well, but not winning games, so that we get a high draft pick. Um, there's a lot of guys coming out this year that I'd be really excited to see us get. One guy that actually had a conversation with Mike Bradley the other day is potentially we could be in a spot for Kyle Pitts, who he did mention that we already have Hunter Henry. But one thing to point out is Hunter Henry is playing on the franchise tag this season. He hasn't put up ungodly numbers. He's kind of just, been a placeholder out there on the field. And I have a good feeling that he's going to want a lot of money because even though the production isn't there, there is, everybody in the league seems to be like, this is a really good tight end. And if he's going to want a lot of money, we probably won't pay him. And to franchise tag him again, we're still going to be paying him like $15 or $16 million for the year. So I could potentially see him go, and to get a guy like him would be really awesome.
Yeah, that's an interesting one right there. Hunter Henry. I think when he's healthy, he's a good player. He's missed a lot of time, and I think you're right. I think he might demand a lot of money. I'm not saying he's as good as this player because I don't think he is. I think he might see something similar to an Austin Hooper type situation where he just wants, say, too much money for what a rebuilding team wants to give. And they might let him go. They might draft a tight end. I don't know if they draft Kyle Pitts because he might go in the first round. I don't think they would take a tight end in the first round. I'm not sure, but they might. I don't know. But you're right. I don't see them making the playoffs. I think they're going to go around 6-10 probably. I just think they have talent. Clearly, they have a lot of potential, but just to lose all those games in the way they did, those are games you can't lose. Those are games that hurt your momentum and everything like that. And the fact they're 2-5 when I think they should be probably 4-3. I think the missed field goal against the Saints. That's a game that they just straight lost. All credit to the Saints, but you make that field goal, the game's over. And then the Broncos game, just unbelievable the way they lost. They could easily, if they were 4-3 right now, I'd say yeah, this is a team that could definitely make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
2-5 though, I can't see it.
Yeah, I think it's really kind of just a tone season as a whole. When you do lose games like that, you just tend to don't get to, you don't get it done throughout the season. And I'll throw some numbers up here. Hunter Henry, 324 yards for only one touchdown. I thought he'd have a good year, honestly, because he's playing for a contract. Justin Herbert, usually rookie QBs and even inexperienced guys tend to like to target the tight end a lot, but that isn't the case. Justin Herbert, we've seen him chuck the ball deep a lot. He's really uncorks the ball and lets it go deep down the field. So he hasn't really been targeted a whole lot. Um, so I just, unless he doesn't want a lot of money and we can get a deal done for cheap, I don't see how we keep him.
Yeah, and I'm interested to hear your take on it. When I look at Henry from an outside point of view, I think he's a guy with talent, but at the same time, we mentioned the injuries. have we ever seen him be that really good number one undisputed tight end? Because you have to remember when he was coming in, Antonio Gates was still there. And sure, he wasn't, prime Antonio Hall of Fame Gates, but he was still a respectable tight end. And then, Gates finally leaves. Henry has a massive injury. And like you mentioned, his numbers this year aren't lighting the world on fire. Last year he was pretty good, but I mean, that's probably his best year right there. Even then, it's only 54 yards a game, 652 yards, 5 touchdowns. What do you think? Is this a guy that Have you seen that guy that could become a true number one tight end, or is he just a guy that is a decent tight end?
Yeah, as you said, unfortunately, I haven't seen anything from that tells me that this is a number one tight end guy. This is a guy who's worth investing a lot of money in, like a George Kittle or Travis Kelsey. And like I said, unless he somehow doesn't want a lot of money, which I don't expect. I think that's very same reason that we got rid of Desmond King is because he wasn't playing. His production kind of fell off, and his rookie contract was going to become probably was going to want a lot of money. So we dealt him and got what we could. Also, though, I do feel there was some internal strife with him and Anthony Lynn butting heads, maybe Gus Bradley, and not getting a chance to play as much, especially with Chris Harris having come in. But yeah, I don't know. I think he's got to be gone. But putting the Chargers aside, I'm really excited for football this weekend, Noah. Unfortunately, as always, I got to work in the morning. So unless there's something that we didn't cover that you really wanted to talk about tonight, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, no, I just want to say thanks to everyone for tuning in. Thanks for all the comments. Had a lot of fun as usual. My voice is actually starting to go as well. You might be able to hear it. So kind of a good time to end it, but you got to work tomorrow, but you better be ready for Georgia, Florida. And, once you guys lose, you better be ready for my Sullen Mullen memes I'm going to make in post, man.
Oh, man, I'm really hoping that I don't have to see them. All hate aside, Noah, though, I hope that we just get a really good game. I don't want to see, I honestly don't want to even see us have a blowout win. I want this to be really close the whole entire game, a lot of back and forth, be really excited, come down to the wire. That's the kind of game that I want, whether we win or lose it. Obviously, I want my team to win, same as you do. I just hope we get a really good game tomorrow, Noah, and I'm really excited for it. I'll be at Buffalo Wild Wings watching it most likely.
Yeah, I agree. You just want a good game, and I expect a good game. One of the best rivalries in college, if not the best, in my opinion. I think you're gonna see it go down the wire. I want a good game, but hopefully we win. Because if we don't, I'm gonna be very sad. And I know you guys, I'm gonna be hearing it all day, just because. And I understand that because I'll do the same to you. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I just want to, like Noah said, I want to thank everybody that came in tonight. Gerald saying "Go Dogs." Seems like there's a lot of love for the dogs in the show tonight, which for Dogs fans, that's great. For me, not much. But thank everybody for joining.
Oh, one last thing, Garth. Don't you have a plug to do, real quick?
Oh yeah, that is right. Yes, let me pull this up here because I don't want to screw this up because I didn't have time to really, memorize that, and I want to thank Noah for saying that. But yeah, so as you guys know, we are not the only show here on the Sports Box. We are your Friday night show. And there's plenty of other great shows, especially Brian. Brian puts on a fantastic show. He's the one who got me to want to start doing this. And then when he offered me and Noah a spot on the Sports Box, we were like, yeah, absolutely, man. So I just want to go ahead and take the time to, get a shout out in here before we get off. Next week, they're going to have Jack Fritz from WIP Philly coming on Monday at 7 o'clock Eastern. They always get a lot of great guests on the show. Really entertaining to watch. As always, Brian is a great host. Mike is a great host as well. And, they take the time to get some quality people to come on the show. So definitely go and check them out if you guys Monday night. And definitely, if you're not too busy, watch some football this weekend because it's going to be a really good weekend of football.
Absolutely, and hopefully they keep growing this thing. Hopefully, They keep getting these good guests. And hopefully, we keep doing our thing. We keep getting popularity. Hopefully we can even, be in one of these things and talking to somebody big. But yeah, let's make the big time, man. Let's keep building this thing. Let's keep, getting our fans in here, making comments. Let's keep getting better. Let's keep having fun.
Most definitely. All right. As always, Noah, good luck tomorrow.
Good luck.
All right, guys. Have a good night. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Sports Box. Follow us on Facebook at Sports Box Show, Twitter at Sports Box Show, Instagram at The Sports Box Show. Find us on YouTube and join Outside the Box, our Facebook sports discussion group. The Sports Box is brought to you by our friends at CrowdPlay. Download the free CrowdPlay app today and use promo code THEBOX at sign up for 10 points. See you next time.